What is up, adventurers, and welcome to a brand new ShawnSetGO video. With today, we're going to talk about horrific. No, I'm just kidding. No more horrific visions videos. Honestly, with the release of Orgrimmar, it's going to be the same routine. But let's move on to more important discussions that I think need to be happening in the WoW space. And for those of you who miss it, there was a Nordic game. I guess you could call it like a version of a TED Talk, but we got to see Ian Hazzikostas talking about World of Warcraft, you know, as it were, but also the really important parts about how the game is developing, is being developed, and kind of the future of WoW. Of course, if you're watching this, you are likely seeing my channel at 1,400 subscribers. Believe it or not, that's a huge hurdle for me. You hit these plateaus in the YouTube space, and so it's really good to see that we're still gaining followers bit by bit and adding more people to our Turtle Club and the community and having more people. So I guess looking forward, I would love to see more people in the Discord. We've had highs and lows with the Discord, and we've seen lots of people in the streams and the comments. So if we can build up the Discord, that would be a huge thing for me. So I'm going to make a specific section for WoW and people who want to share content about WoW in our Discord. So join it. There's going to be a link, and then you can add whatever content you want me to talk about, as well as content that you're just interested in and think is cool and that we need to react to. So let's jump into it now. Let's look at the interview. Let's look at what exactly happened. So in this, it does go a bit in depth. If you haven't watched, it's on YouTube. You can see it, but breaking down some of the more important parts, it says Ian Hazzikostas gave a presentation recently to Nordic Video Game Developer Conference talking about 20 years of WoW and what they strive to do. And Wowhead breaks it down a little bit more. So you can see here, this is World of Warcraft in 2025. After 20 years of development, World of Warcraft is now a game made of thousands of different types of achievements, collectibles, priorities to consider, all diverse experience making up different parts of the game. Ask a dozen different serious players about what it is to play WoW, and you'll get a dozen different answers. What is both exciting and when maintaining a diverse game world, but also challenging navigating the most diverse feedback coming from different points of views and desires. I do have a bit of contention with this point. And I get the heart of what is being said here. That basically somebody might RP and that's what they do. Somebody might do dungeons and that's what they do. Somebody might do PvP and that's what they do. I don't think that's really what it is in reality, though. I want to say that the parts that you play is kind of what you like to do, and the parts you don't play are the parts you don't like to do. And I think that's fine. So I think that there's a lot of effort or a lot of desire for everybody to play every part of game, or to make the game enjoyable for everybody. I think that's often an issue because you're often trying to appeal to players who have no desire to do that type of content. And the crux of the issue of why the single button rotation to me is such a problem is because you're trying to appeal to players who have no desire to learn that type of gameplay. So it's like you're trying to sustain something with things that just don't interest certain players in the hopes of like, oh yeah, it'll stick. And in reality, it kind of just brings everything kind of down, in my opinion. I want to be wrong about this. But let's move on. Traditional design direction with many developers were originally trained holds true to a specific vision. This is the way we do things, and it's the way that's best for players, but the game is viewed through a different lens in 2025. Basically saying that WoW in its flaws was because during that time, or whatever issue was happening during that time, that the vision is not possible. Like having just one singular vision is not possible with WoW because it is constantly moving. It's a constantly moving target. And so it's important to know that will change. So World of Warcraft in 2025, it used to take 200 to reach max level. Now it's 20 in the War Within. This was said as like a blanket win. I really wish Ian had said in this that but with that being reduced, what do we lose? We lose a lot of that class identity that you build over those 200 hours. Like it's something along those lines, but that wasn't said. I really wish it was said. It's like an hour long. I recommend you watching it. It has a lot of good aspects, but there's a lot that was missed, in my opinion. End game activities, one-time narrative, repeatable world content, mostly solo. Yes, instance cooperative modes, delves. Delves are 1 to 5, dungeons are 5, raids are 10 to 30. I think this still holds true, despite what people say. I think for the most part, these are kind of still the core end game activities. So small and large scale casual and rated PvP. In my opinion, PvP is kind of in the same state it has been for quite some time. I do think if we're going to consider that WoW is this constantly changing vision, I think we need to change the vision with WoW PvP currently. I just don't think it's interesting or fun. I don't, as a non-PvPer, feel that desire. I know I said earlier in this video that we need to stop trying to appeal to people who have no enjoying the content, but like make me want to jump into it at least. And then when I go, oh yeah, I don't like PvP, at least like at least it's my fault then, you know, like it's on me, I guess. Thousands of collectibles, cosmetics, achievements, and 20 years of content, role-playing servers, and communities. Got to slip in something for the role players as well. Balancing feel against perception. So basically the whole concept of feel against perception was presented in a way of like, in the past, there was clear separation of what was good and bad. And now it's a less than 5% difference between the top end and the bottom. And it's really not as significant as it seems. However, something that he said that I thought that was well appreciated was, if you're on the bottom of that list, it still feels cruddy to be on the bottom of the list. Like, it doesn't matter if it's a small percentage, it's not going to feel good. So I think that was 100% exactly how it should be. I think that making that balance on those trees is important, but I think what their mission should be, or what they should be focusing on with this, is now that things are getting closer and closer with balance, let's go back to carving out class identity a bit more instead of trying to meld things into everyone being kind of the same. As a warrior, I feel always obligated to feel warrior lust ? But in reality, it's a meme, you know, it's kind of a meme. Make fun today, there may not be a tomorrow, which was kind of it was honestly a very sobering thought to think that, even from somebody like Ian's perspective, who's been on the team for he's been team for like almost 2 decades, that they have this idea that, you know, WoW may not be here tomorrow. So I think that this concept was very good in that a lot of the lessons they've learned along the way, especially with talent trees as they grow, is that when you have this longer talent tree, you might see it and you go, this is too overwhelming. But if they change it to something like Mists, where the talent trees were unbearable, and people hated them, you might go, well, let's go back to this way, because even if this is a lot to look at, this makes you feel like you have no choice. And the meta is going to be carved out of one. In some levels, you get no talent points, and that feels terrible. So learning that basically, yes, this in the long run would have looked good, but ultimately people want to feel rewarded whenever they're leveling, and having a point per level and having all those talent points is important to carving that out bit by bit, having that little upgrade bit by bit. And my first thought with this was, well, look at it now. Like, I mean, like, look at it now. And, you know, now we have the hero talents and the like your specialization talents, and then the class talents. So like you have those 3 trees, and now it seems overwhelming again. We're back to here again. But in that, I think there is still opportunity to make things work. And this was my idea for this. So hear me out. I might be wrong, but hear me out with this. My idea with this is to make, if the constant overwhelming level of talents, the amount of talents that are just purely passives, I think that talent trees, like, I'm not talent tree maker, I don't know how it would be organized, but I think talent trees should be made to where you could carve out the activities you want to complete. So as a tank, doing PvP, as a tank doing dungeons, as a tank doing AoE content, solo target, single target content, raiding content. There should always be ways to carve out that build within your talent trees. But what is kind of like the side talent trees, or further down, like, you know, you see the arrow, it goes all the way down, where that goes down, or where those go adjacent, should always be what you personally want to carve out of that one singular build to make it the core of your build. Some games do this with gear, and then you build around the gear. I don't think WoW's ever been that type of game totally, but I think right now there is a desire. And this is like this is what he has said, the path of least resistance, something about pathing. But people are going to take the path, and this is what people used to do in classic WoW, is I'm going to make a build that's going to achieve the most without me having to change my talent trees. And that's the way it used to be, because switching talent trees used to cost money, and people didn't have money to just do it. Nowadays, people have the money and people don't mind. And also, I mean, it's you just swap it, you just do it. So I think that nowadays, if you're going to allow that freedom, if you allow that freedom of choice, there has to be ways to still carve out your specific desires within the builds. Otherwise, it all feels bland, and we're always going to take the path of least resistance, and we're back to this square one. I think that talents at first, when they changed them, seemed better, but I think overall it doesn't necessarily. It's kind of like we're running away from that again, is what it feels like. One-way ratchets. One important exception to this newfound philosophy on short-term fun over long-term elegance is one-way ratchets, because some decisions can't be pulled back on and shouldn't be experimented with lightly. Trying to go in one direction, the reverse course can end up leaving players much more unhappy. The idea was, what was it? The idea that came up was basically ideas that can be reversed quickly can be made quickly. Ideas that cannot be reversed quickly should be made slowly. So that's the idea. That's a problem for future us. Zaryu said this in his reaction, and I agree with this. I agree with this, is that this is problematic in my opinion. If you look at something and you go, this is a runaway train and it's gonna crash, but it's gonna crash next expansion, and by that time we're gonna figure it out. To me, that's problematic. I think that the best time to test what a new expansion can provide is when the previous expansion has players who are willing to go through and experience, like, hey, does this work? Hey, is this, before the new expansion comes out? Because what happens is, if you make a problem for somebody else, then somebody who jumps into, say, the next expansion for WoW goes, wait, how long has this been a problem? It's like, well, we've known about it for this long. Blizzard just didn't feel like dealing with it, or they dealt with it, but they never field tested it when they could have eons ago. So to me, this is a problematic standpoint, but I understand it to a degree, because this kind of goes along with the previous fact, which is basically like, let's make the short term valuable and less focus on, well, over the long term, it's going to sound good. A lot of the points that Ian came up with, I will give him the credit, were basically, we tested it because we tested it this way, and people, like, the way we were looking at it, like, wow, this fixes a lot of the issues we're having. And then players saw it, and that was the issue. I don't necessarily think he was blaming the player base, but saying basically that ultimately how your players perceive it is the reality. So that to me was important. Meeting players all the way. Looking forward, Blizzard's goal is to build trust within the community by meeting players where they are, and by viewing decisions through a player-focused approach, prioritizing player problems over design problems. There may not always be the perfect static solution, but as long as they're responding quickly to player feedback, it will put a development closer to what is best. I will say, I do agree to this to a certain degree. However, always responding to player feedback isn't necessarily conducive all the time. Sometimes it's going to be against what you're trying to achieve if you're constantly addressing to the loudest group or whatever group is giving you the most feedback. Often you just need to talk to the people who are the specialists, talk to the leaders in the communities who are doing this, talk to the top players who know what they're doing, and ask them what they think needs to be fixed. To me, like the interview that Ian had with Maximum and the Potty C folks, to me was kind of very like, let me talk at you about these designs, and you guys are going to say, like, this sounds good, because, like, let's put a positive spin on it for me, is what it sounded like. Instead, what I would have much appreciated is like, well, I have a criticism for this. What is your response to that criticism? Well, we don't have an answer for that now, but actually it gives us some good thought. I would have much more appreciated that versus just going like, oh, this is an all around good single button rotation. Yeah. Something like that. I love the discussion about Unholy and Frost Debacle and the StarCraft 2 meta. So for the if you don't want to watch the video, basically Unholy was in this position of constantly being above Frost, and so Frost was still performing, but was clearly performing less good. So what seemed clear to the devs at the time was to make Frost better, and only nominally better, but because the top players who weren't previously playing Frost are now playing it, that experience felt heightened. And now that the top players were doing it, everybody was doing it. So there was nobody was playing Unholy. And so the feel was that like now Unholy is worse. Even though Frostmay had only been nominally better, well, now the whole meta is shifted because now the people who never considered playing Frost are now playing it, and they realize the potential while simultaneously Frost got buffed. So like those two things in line change things. And it kind of gives a lot of perspective to how the charts are made on Raider.io and how they're ranked. It's like in reality, it may not change to where now the worst player is the best player, but it may change if potentially you had players playing those specs more often, or the top players playing that more often. You know, the one-way ratchets portion is very insightful. There's nothing more impermanent than a temporary fix. So I'm glad they have to really weigh the repercussions of making major change. Like imagine if they only added a catalyst for one expansion, then they wanted to rework how players obtain their tier sets. Could never fathom how going back into pre-catalyst world, even if the new method was net easier to gain pieces. To be honest, I feel like these moments are strictly for expansion releases. I don't like these moments personally in major patch releases because they always feel like you have to relearn something, or your now status quo is now like a pain. I'd rather you improve the status quo as it is than try to make major change amongst that patch, because to me it's just going back and wasting everybody's time. The difference between Wowhead comments compared to the YouTube ones is staggering. Are Wowhead commenters okay? Yeah, I typically don't look at them, but let's look at them. Hold on. They don't do 90% of what was highlighted in the post. Let's translate these takeaways. Serving the community, firing 90% of your human customer service, prioritize player problems, prioritize design problems for five dev favorite specs, and let the others rot. Avoid adversarial design patterns. Make the most degenerate design mistakes over and over again, claiming you've learned from your mistakes. Stay agile. Make small balance changes a few weeks into the patch. Trust is everything, and that's why we've destroyed it. It must be fun today. It must be fun today for tomorrow, no matter to matter. Push stuff as fast as possible, no matter the condition. Damn, everybody stay away from these comments. So some commenters look at my videos and go, man, you're always negative about the game. Listen, watch the Wowhead comments and then tell me. I think that it was an excellent presentation, a great insight into Ian's mind and how the game's direction is being handled. It's interesting to realize that Ian probably is one of the most foremost experts in the live service design. I think that's something that did come to light in his discussion as well, because he was saying basically like a lot of the people who were playing the game became designers or became part of the dev team. That's actually really cool. I really liked how he talked about the vision when creating something, but when they launched, the vision also belongs to players and embracing the player's path. There's also him talking about World Quest system, how players liked it in Legion, but now in BFA, it feeling also applies to raids. It's a shame that touching on a mythic raid format is taboo for now. I think it's because the World Quest aspect when it was first released became this idea of, it changed up the constant, like I guess the reiteration of really daily quests and how those were initially introduced to us. It changed that end game aspect and made it more accessible and a lot more enjoyable. But I think even then, to me now, like World Quests have kind of staled a bit. I do think World Quests need a pretty big change as well. One important exception to this newfound philosophy on short-term fun over long-term elegance are one-way ratchets, because some decisions can't be pulled back. Yeah. This sounds a bit like issues with WoD, where players didn't like garrisons, but that was already so integrated in the way they really couldn't scrap it without ending the expansion early, or Shadowlands, where similar issues had the Covenant system where they tried things that didn't work. To be honest, like I said, like I don't like major changes in an expansion that basically go, hey, this is how it works. Now this is how it works. Totally different pathway. But honestly, I would have rather them have basically go, hey, we're abandoning all else until we can get this right. So right now we're going to have a pretty like low down patch until this is work. This is a core of our expansion. I would have rather them done that instead of trying to basically, I would say, I don't know, like instead of basically trying to go, well, now this is gone forever. Because there could have been a world, I guess is what I'm saying. There could have been a world where this could still be a thing. And we could have went from garrisons to housing in a more clear, like one-to-one direction. Abandoning these things after an expansion because they didn't work out doesn't mean they could have never worked out. It's just that I think that there was a lot of people who were done with it, and it just seemed like with Heroes of the Storm, it's like, well, you know, it's just kind of where we're sayonara. It's all gone now. So I guess that's what it is. But I think there's a lot of really interesting details in this. I think there's a lot to learn from what he's saying from a designer's perspective. And if you are one of those players, I think there's a lot of positives from this. But I think like some of these Wowhead commenters, there's also a lot of negatives that you could pull from this. You know, a lot of like, well, you're saying this, like clearly people are designing the path of least resistance. They are going straight through the grass. Like you gave them a sidewalk, they're going straight through the grass. So yeah, you gave them the path they wanted, but they were doing that because the way you designed it was poor. They didn't want to go, okay, now make this the main way and everyone's doing it fast. They went, what they really wanted is, no, improve the sidewalk. Like the sidewalk, like I could do this with the sidewalk was cobblestone and was rough to walk on. So people walked on the grass because it was softer. And you went, well, now we'll make a cobblestone pathway there. They clearly just want a sidewalk here. It's like, no. The issue was like fill it with some sand in between the crevices, so it's a little like less bumpy, you know. So to me, I understand the issues, the flaws in some of these statements because he is making kind of like a summary of 20 years in this time. But I think that there's a lot to learn from this as far as where they're coming from and why things can't just be tinkered so easily. So a little bit of grace, a little bit of here and there is, I think, good for most retail WoW players these days. So hope you guys enjoyed the video. Hope you like the video. Hope you get some time to watch it. If you do, of course, comment what you think that or something that you learned as something as well that you don't feel like was explained very well. It's something that you're like, wait, this was the problem all along. So this is contradictory to what you're saying. Let me know in the comments. And of course, subscribe to this page, subscribe and follow our Discord channel and share the content that you're wanting me to react to or just content that you love about WoW in there. I'd love to see more of it. I feel like I follow so many different creators and spaces, but I sometimes I miss stuff. I missed this for a little while. So I'm glad that I caught up to it. But as we're building a community, let's share this content together. But until next time, guys, I'll catch you in the next one. And gals, catch you in the next one. Peace.